Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mind Your Buffalo podcast. This is your host Ravikant, aka the Buffalo Intellectuals, and welcome to a 50th episode of this dumb podcast that I started like years ago just to kind of rant and kind of throw it out into the universe. And it's been a great journey. I found a lot of fan support for this podcast, including many Savarnas. And the fact that so many Savarnas follow this podcast, listen to what I have to say, give me so much support, and amplify this show so much, makes me less bitter about, Savarnas in a very strange way, because it shows me that there are people who are capable of thinking and reflecting, and even if it is very performative, but they're trying and they're taking a journey. And somewhere along the way, like I said, announced a while ago, that I was writing a book. The book's done, it's coming out. So this 50th episode is also a book announcement. It is now available for pre-order on Amazon. I'm gonna edit the icon of the book here, like somewhere here. The book will come. Okay, yeah, that's the book. That's the book that I have written. It's called Meet the Savarnas. Got a very tacky cover, and the brief that I gave him was that the book needs to look heinous. It needs to look garish. It needs to look ugly, and that book should feel out of place on a bookshelf next to an Amitav Ghosh or a Shashi Tharoor book. And I think the cover does a great job of it. This, without a doubt, will be the worst book of the year. So please, it'll be hated. There'll be op-eds written about it, or it'll be totally ignored. And if you ever try to tell anybody that this book is nice, they'll be like, dude, like this book is unscientific. It's not written with rigor. It's so much opinion. It's just ranting. It's not. It'll have all of those fun stuff. So I'm telling you in advance, this is the worst book written. Uh, you know, but buy it just to kind of aggravate people, or like buy this book and like burn it. Okay, like burn it, hate it. But buy it. Don't pirate it and do it. Like I'm usually pro piracy, except when it's my stuff because I want to make money. My motivations are transparent. There you go. But yeah, it's um it's really nice. It's a gift that the day my book goes live on Amazon for pre-ordering is also the day that the Indian government has finally announced, for the first time since independence, that it will be doing the caste census. The next time we do the census, we will be counting caste. So this is a huge achievement. Maybe I'll do a episode on this very quickly in the coming week, because it's a big story, and something that I have a lot to say about. I've talked about the caste census in my writing, in my op-ed articles, in podcasts before. So I'll cover it. But in many which ways, this announcement sort of confirms what my book was kind of leading up to, and I'm very excited about that part of it. I'm very excited about that part of the journey, because the in the book I have basically done a sort of a contemporary history and cultural studies, sociocultural anthropology of elite liberal Savarna culture in the last 30-35 years. Basically, I'm looking at this generation of millennial elite liberal Savarnas, the generation which was supposed to um, make India great, if I may say so. Because here's the story of it, broadly speaking. I just want to talk about this a little bit. That when I was younger, when I was in college around the mid 2000s, everywhere I looked, everywhere anybody, and people from that era will remember this. When we were younger, everyone was talking about how by the year 2020, India will become a superpower. That was our goal. Like, the words, the number 2020 did not mean a cricket format. It meant the year we were going to become the, toast of the world. And now the deadline has been quietly postponed to 2047. Like, there was never a discussion of it. And nobody, by the way, has said, hey, weren't we supposed to do this by 2020? Like, why have you pushed it back to 2047? That conversation has never happened in this culture. But mid 2005s, that whole period, 2008, 9, 10, 11, right up till 2015ish, I would imagine, there was a lot of, like, positivity, hyper positivity. तुम कुछ बोल ही नहीं सकते थे. You couldn't come out and say, hey, like, the way you're going about it, what you're building, what your approach is not going to lead to these results. But you couldn't talk about it. Everything was about positivity and, like, don't be negative and all that. And that generation of people who benefited from the market reforms of the early 90s, which, by the way, is another thing nobody has revisited in this country, right? Like, we have just been taught that Manmohan Singh's reforms or changing of the economic system and the controls in the early 90s was a radically great thing. And I'm not saying the system before that was good, that was terrible. But, like, moving from one terrible thing does not make the next terrible thing good in per se, right? Because now we've had 35 years of, post Manmohanomics, as they used to say. But, like, in these post 35 years, income inequality has become much worse. Has Conditions have become much worse. The cities have become more unlivable, and a small group of people have become very visibly very wealthy and very alienated very quickly. So there's something to be said about that. There's no discussion on it. Culture just completely got taken over by that group of people who went into engineering colleges and B schools around this period, benefited from that era of small, small batches, low fees, but big incremental jump in placements. Like, if you want to do an MBA today, best of luck. It costs 20-25 lakh rupees. And your placement in most MBA colleges, like, unless it's the very best or you're the very top of the class, you'll be lucky to get a, like, 12, 15, 17 lakh rupee placement. And that's the best case scenario. So you're starting in debt. You're paying 25 lakh rupees for an MBA, and on the other side of it, you might get a 15 lakh rupee job. When I went and did my MBA, the fee was 5.5 lakh rupee, and I got like a 7.5 lakh rupee job on the other side of it. So you were starting out. That's when MBA was profitable. But even back then, like, that 7.5 lakh rupee job, by the way, is now probably about 12 lakh rupees. But that 5 lakh MBA fees is now 25 lakhs. So that kind of tells you the way this whole thing has sort of played out between 2006 and now all 2025. Like, between 2005 and 2025, in these 20 years, the way this has kind of played out. But that generation, which got their tech jobs and MBA jobs and things of that nature in the early 2000s, and, like, everybody was like, they were like, there's a business model, wealth at the bottom of the pyramid. And everybody was talking about mobile revolution, e-commerce will change India, and things of that nature. There'll be an aviation boom, and Jaipur will become the next big city, and Pune will become the Silicon Valley. And like, all these, everybody was braced for this, like, tier 2 town revolution. And India was like, now tech companies have become a joke. But, till 2010, 11, tech jobs were considered like prestigious, you know and that whole generation, that whole bubble, has totally failed to deliver on the goals that it set for itself. I'm not even talking about the goals that everybody else thought that they would achieve. The goals that they said they would do, they have totally failed, because in their personal politics, in their organizational politics, in the way they conceptualize, when they looked at the world, the problem identification, and then, like, laddering from that problem to what would be the solution which would fix it, that itself was flawed because it was very Savarna in its gaze. So they did not understand only social realities. They did not understand only caste and labor dynamics. Therefore, their systems were totally flawed, and none of them have kind of been able to do justice to it. They also, like, normally when a group of elites gets social reality so wrong, you see a small cultural backlash. You see a counterculture developing. Here counterculture was these people only. These people are only going to engineering colleges and becoming stand-up comedians when they come outside. They are going to MBA schools and want to come and work in Yashraj in the marketing department or something like that, and then ruin Yashraj also. Like, you go back and look at 2011, 12, 13, 14. Not that Yashraj was making fantastic films or whatever, but then it almost became like a advertisement placement company. You see this, should they see romance or films like that was coming out in that era. They feel like glorified, like ads and deals. Like MBAs took over like films, MBA took over cricket, MBAs took over all of these things. And then, like, by 2016, 2017, these people started shouting startup, startup, startup. Startup was another, like, just this big con that, like, you make a business plan, you pitch it to a venture capitalist, you get some funds, and basically you pitch a business plan, you show that it works in one neighborhood or one city, and you say, Dekho, I put 100 rupees, but I am already making 200 rupee profit. Now imagine if I can do this in 50 cities. And that's in a nutshell what they were doing. And a lot of venture capitalist funding came in. None of these startups really took off. Like, I'm old enough to remember that Ola and Uber were introduced to us as, oh, you don't like cabs, cabs are, like, unreliable and all that. Here is a great service, a service upgrade, and it's convenient, and it's aggregation economy and gig economy. Well, we are now in 2025. The drivers of these cab services are not happy. The companies are shady. Blue Smart just kind of got shut down because of some financial, like buggery here and there. And the customer is ultimately getting screwed because you can't rely on these services. Cabs get cancelled or unavailable or whatever. Same thing with, like, things like Oyo. You was like, Oyo will make hotel booking safe, and shady hotels can never no longer kind of, like, you're assured quality. Well, the word Oyo has become like a byword in popular culture for a shady hotel, right? And it's not just that, like, people go to hotels for sex. That's why hotels exist, by the way. A large variety of customers, from everything from small hotels to, like, the five-star hotels. A lot of people, like, it's a place for them to be intimate. But, like, Oyo just became synonymous with this shady hotel. They set out to kind of revolutionize the thing, and now they've become the exact thing that they said that they were going to change. That's a story of India startup thing. And the fact is that you could have seen this coming, because all of these, like, techpreneurs and all of these bros and all, like, the prevailing culture within B schools, even today, the prevailing culture within engineering schools, um, design, architecture, law, even today, you go in there and it's almost like they can't still see the problem. Fix kya karoge? So my book has really kind of tried to look into it, because there was entire cultural capture by this cohort. They showed these great dreams to everybody that, okay, there'll be development. It is around 98 and early 2000, 1998, early 2000s, where the word development becomes an electoral slogan. Indira Gandhi had said Garibi Hatao in the 70s, and that became an electrifying slogan. It was simple to understand, and it won the Congress many elections. And they kept saying Garibi Hatao, Garibi Hatao, Garibi Hatao, Garibi Hatao. By the mid 1980s, it had just become a slogan, and the poor, heaving, marginalized masses of this country realized that it was not. Um, this was not going to deliver what they wanted. They were not going to be pulled out of poverty by these slogans, and quietly slogans like Garibi Hatao just went away. And then in the late 90s and early 2000s, Like they threw development as a slogan for us, okay, like this will save you, tech and this and that. And for like almost 20 years, the poor, heaving, marginalized masses of this country have been patient with the political system, and they kept voting and they kept voting and they kept, and but now we are coming out of that cycle. Like everything peaks and then shifts, and we are coming out on the cycle on the other side, where they're like, no, 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 like we don't believe you anymore. We don't believe this development. We don't believe all of this nonsense anymore. You give us our haq. We've come back to the idea of the social contract of, no, you want the vote, give us the welfare. And that's the argument my book is making. Like we went through this whole cycle, and towards the end of my book, like I talk about how the Savarnas have been unable to kind of deliver this thing, and the challenges have just surmounted, and they don't have an answer to it. But the marginalized masses of this country have moved on from this, and the fact that the BJP government, after denying caste census for so long, has made it its policy, is proof that whether it is BJP, whether it is Congress, like Congress also lost how many elections before Rahul Gandhi started talking about caste, and they never did that. And like I remember, like not even very long ago, I think 2 years ago, I was invited in a podcast by the News Laundry team. And in that podcast, they were saying, okay, but caste census, is it useful? Will the common people understand? उससे क्या होगा? And I was like, do you realize that Rahul Gandhi has not come here by choice? He has lost so many elections. He tried corruption. He said "Soot boot ki sarkar." He talked about Rafael. He talked about Mohabbat ki dukan. He talked about so many things. You give us hate, we will give you love. He tried so many things. Nothing worked. And this is literally the last resort, like the door that Congress did not want to open, but they were forced to. It was an existential question. And that's when you have Kharge brought in, and that's when you have to. Now he walks around with the book of Constitution, and he's talking about caste census, and it has delivered result. And this put so much pressure on the government that BJP has said, okay, we will do caste census. So clearly, this was a powerful mudda. This was a powerful issue. My question is not from Rahul Gandhi or Modi or BJP or whatever. My question is, how come all these Savarna journalists and writers missed it? Politicians can have interests, but you are supposed to be the keepers of culture. How did you miss it? How are you, like, politicians have now started to make, they're like, okay, we have to do this, but the culture will still not get it. You go to the art fairs, you go to the literary festivals, you go to these elite spaces, you will still not get it. And that is my point fundamentally here, that there's no narrative, which is why at the beginning of this book, at the beginning of not the book, at the beginning of this episode, or like I'm not going to do a full episode, I just want to do kind of like a small little thing about it. At the beginning of this clip, I said that this will become the worst book of the year, and this is why I'm saying this. I hope I'm wrong, but this is why I'm saying this. Because um this kind of commentary makes a lot of elite savarnas very uncomfortable, and they are in positions of culture, right? Like they can critique politicians, but they can't be critiqued, right? So only media and the writers you're allowed to critique are actually the right wing ones, right? But you are not allowed to critique the mediocrity of the liberal posing ones, because they have self appointed themselves as the moral custodians of the public consciousness. And it seems like there is a fight between, like, the Ravish Kumars of the world on one side, and on the other side you have all these Godi media and types, and like that fight is playing out in academia, in politics, in newspapers. But the whole premise of my book is, it's like two branches of the same family fighting with each other. Imagine a big joint family where there is one uncle which is like very modern, smokes cigars and drinks scotch and dresses in suits and isn't very religious and is like talking about tolerance and you know and things like that, and listens to English music and things like that. And then there is another uncle who is like waking up every morning, doing puja, doesn't eat non-veg, doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, and like is dressed in Indian clothes and like listens to bhajans when he's trying to relax. And these two uncles are fighting with each other, both uncles with their like wives and kith and kin and nephews and nieces, like these two branches are fighting with each other, right? And like on the ground floor below these uncles, like the floor, like they're fighting, they're living on the same flat and they're fighting, or big house. And imagine the floor, the farsh is made of glass, okay, and below that glass is actually a full bhir, thousands of people, and they are just looking up at these two branches of the family fighting with each other. Oh, liberal uncle is saying this, or this uncle is saying that, and they're fighting existentially, bitterly fighting, but like we are below and we are looking at them, we can't do anything, we are just looking at them. And in this basement from where we are looking up at these two branches fighting with each other, right, the light, the fan, the supply of the basement, the switches are all up. So we can't actually like liberal uncle is fighting. No, you turn on light from this hour to this hour, supply water by this hour by this hour, and the other uncle is like, no, you do it like this, and they are fighting for the switches of the control, but the people in the basement have no say in this. That's the summary of India. And if you say it, then the conservative uncle and that branch of the family, we know how they'll operate. There is FIRs, and they are like, they'll send bulldozer, they'll threaten you, they'll gali galoj you on social media, which also might happen to this book, because title mein hi meet the Savarna likha hai, right? So nowadays, like, they'll say, oh, Savarna is a gali, but it's not. I'm just saying meet the Savarnas. There are so many books which have the title, Dalit this, or Muslim this. तो जब आप वो टाइटल डाल सकते हो, माई लाइक पॉइंट इज लाइक व्हाई कांट आई पुट इट्स अ सोशल कैटेगरी if you're saying black something something something, right? So then it's a social category, but these logics don't work, right? So they might get angry, like, because when I wrote like those articles back in the day dating like Savarna and all, they got very angry. I don't know whether they read the article also or not, but they abuse the crap out of me in English also, like not just in Hindi and all, but there are like these English educated, English speaking conservative people also. So we know how they operate. That's how they operate in a very weird way. At least that you can see, आपको दिख रहा है, right? The liberal parts, what they will do is like they will not tell you anything only. Somebody will come and say something like, oh, um he's actually na like he's a little bit of a shady person, khatam, done. Or like they'll say like his method is not very rigorous, it's a good promise, huh, the book is quite promising, but like XYZ whatever. The book is nice, like I encourage it, it's very nice, but now the book would have been so much better if he had done this ABC. खत्म कर देगा आपका book को उधर वो. Or what they will do is those liberals will go to other people from the basement, from the community, and say कि, have you seen this book? It's a very promising book, but I have some issues. What do you think? फिर वो अब वो लिखेंगे, अब फिर वो आके बोलेगा मैं थोड़ी बोल रहा हूँ. People from the basement are only criticizing this book. So the cultural reproduction is so matlab, deeply enmeshed in this, especially the ideas of book. right? I have paid a very big, like, like not as big as some of the others. Like I've paid my price to reach this point. I present myself as a joker, but anybody who has heard my podcast at length, you know that like I'm not just like ranting or abusing or whatever. I'm actually making very structured points. It's almost like I have been a serious academic for over a decade. It's almost like that. But in my behavior, I don't reproduce very knowingly and deliberately. I don't reproduce these exact tropes of academic behavior because they very closely in India they have become very closely aligned with a certain kind of Savarna performance. You go to any of these like elite colleges and you see the professors, the way they talk, the way they dress, the way they behave, the way they talk about their own book or own writing. It's so performative and suffocating. And you see the students, many of the students, for them, that is the only legitimate way of talking about it. So people will talk about Foucault and like Paulo Freire and all of that, and students are also writing this is. But तुम्हारे खुद के college में there'll be CCTV cameras and body checks and nobody will say anything. So my point is, if I am unable to say that, why am I posturing as a radical in class? I'm not a radical in that sense. I need the job, I need the money. So there are certain institutional things I will take. I also have some red lines which I will not cross. If those will get crossed, then I will leave. Right? Everybody should know what their red line is. So I don't take this academic performance only very seriously. I call myself a joker. I call myself a clown. I'm telling you that my book is mediocre because, of course, it will be. It should be mediocre. Why this pressure on my book to be excellent? It is going to be mediocre. The world is full of writers coming out and saying my book is excellent. I'm saying, no, bhai, my book is dumb. पढ़ लो. वैसे भी you're not doing anything interesting with your life. That's what it is. And I'm trying to talk about stuff that all your meritorious writers are not talking about. Right? So this whole performance of academia, this whole performance of culture only, I reject it. Absolutely. I can't stomach it. I'm happy not being quote unquote serious. I've written in my book also, like, like too much importance gets written. Books get written a lot of times. It's ink on paper. Why are certain publishing houses and certain writers given more or important status? In India, like, publishing is not the preserve of five or six New Delhi based legacy publishing houses. Publishing in India is anybody with a printing press. And there are people with printing presses across ideological spectrum who are writing stuff, who are printing pamphlets, who are circulating in the community for decades. वो भी तो writer है. आप उनको क्यों नहीं recognize करते हैं? How come, like, like writing, like, and then they'll say there's no readership in India. So, because you have never really considered readership expansion a ideological impulse, because most of Savarna culture is about gatekeeping. So a writer has to be a certain mold and a reader has to be a certain mold. And if you speak to people, they'll all deny it. They'll be like, no, no, that's not it. But that is exactly what it comes down to. All my, like, like the progressive Savarna, the few Savarna friends I have who sort of get it, they get it and they agree with it. They're like, yeah, it is exactly that. It is exactly that. Um, like my girlfriend recently, she used a word. It's called SEO activism, search engine optimization activism, and it's fantastic. It's like you figure out you're writing a book. I'll put in a Muslim character. I'll put in a Dalit character. I'll put in a Northeast. Like people write things like that. People think of like, oh, I'm going to write like a youth novel, and it'll be like I'm going to write science fiction and XYZ. They approach it only like that, and it's that book is presented like that, and you go to these writer meets, and the writer is like, a certain kind, and the audience is a certain kind. This whole reproduction itself is very gross, and it becomes grosser when you enter academia, because then all these professors are a certain kind, like, I insist, I'm an associate dean, I'm an associate professor, I never put that out anywhere. Anybody who's been in my classes, a lot of times in my public shows and stuff, my former students come. Anybody who's seen me inside a classroom or has worked with me in an organization, right, knows how intensely and passionately and seriously I conduct myself. But my seriousness is not in performance. My seriousness and intensity is towards my voice, what I'm saying, my analysis, and it will be to, like, within you can't fight systems. That's a Savarna fantasy. I can't work in an organization and change it from within. It's the worst, stupidest idea ever. The only thing you can do is, when you work, like, I don't have to say I'm in the basement. The only thing you can do is, when you're inside the Savarna system, you're inside the Savarna complex, you just have to figure out how much of it can you negotiate with and how much you can't. In that sense, I'm very surprised that I've got this far. I'm very surprised that, because I nearly, that's the whole story. Like, I nearly killed myself. That's how Buffalo Intellectual was born. Because I kept my mouth shut. I never wrote too much in the public domain, barely anything. Before 2019, 2020, you will hardly find in the public domain any writing by me on caste. लिखता ही नहीं था मैं. I didn't know also, but like 2015, 16 around, I started developing the consciousness, but I wrote nothing. It's very like quiet, like not talking about it. Even before that, there's nothing. And then in my own university, I was like, in my public shows, I've talked about this at length. I was really isolated by colleagues and by my students. That's how I, like, started going on social media and ranting, and that's how Buffalo Intellectual was born. So Buffalo Intellectual is just this, um is this phantasm, is this monster, is this creation, is this character which doesn't give a fuck, speaks his mind, but it had to be created, and it speaks its mind into the void, onto a screen, onto a mic, because when I was going to class and when I was going to work, I was completely isolated. And there are tens of thousands of scholars like myself, coming from marginalized communities, coming from the basement of this building that I just described, who feel equally isolated. Many of them drop out of academia. They develop severe mental and health issues. In the worst case scenario, many take their own lives, or at least attempt to. I was lucky that I found this community. I was lucky that when I started ranting on Instagram and Twitter, it just kept growing and growing and growing, and I kept changing myself. Initially, when I started out, I was very angry. I was very angry, and my tone was about aggression and like calling things out and all. And that was the era also. After a while, I was like, there's no point to this. There's no point being, you'll just exhaust your anger. कितना गुस्सा हो जाओगे आप. Also, my anger is deeply personal. I don't need to uh, go out and make use it to make content for people. So when I get angry and when I get serious, when I get raw, it comes out like right now. um, I thought, like, I'm gonna promote the book. Like, there'll be a lot of like, I'll be self-effacing myself. I'll always be saying, "Oh, it's a dumb book." I don't take these things seriously, but I wanted to kind of put it out there that this is why I do it. Right? It's sad that I have to say this, that I take myself very seriously, and what I'm saying, there's a reason why so many people follow the show, subscribe it, support it, have such nice things to say about it, reach out, is because I'm like, I'll get comments very often, like, each episode is like a dissertation, you know, every episode, like, I feel like I've just, you know, seen or heard so much. I need time to process. People will DM me saying, like, the last two episodes felt like I read a book entirely. These are very big compliments, but they're coming because I take this stuff very seriously. But I don't conduct myself like this great public intellectual, because that performance of the public intellectual is itself very bogus and Savarna-fied. I'm happy being the Buffalo intellectual, right? And that's my book. I'll just briefly, like, talk about the book. It's like that whole glass floor analogy, the top bottom. That's the basis of the cover art. Also, it's also the first chapter. Like, I start by saying what is a savarna, like, because many savarnas genuinely conceptually don't understand. It's also the most biographical chapter because I lay out in it like some of my own early journey in formative years, because most biographical accounts tend to be from a point of resilience and survival and things like that, but my journey is one of trying to hack into savarna culture. I was trying to become, like, because they said that savarnas are very serious people, they read books and all of that. So I was trying to become like that, because nobody in my family, forget reading books, many couldn't read books, right? It was not a leisure activity for us, it was not a personality development activity for us. I find it very strange, even today, almost 39 years old, when, like, my Savarna friends tell me that, when I was 7 years old, this was my favorite book. I was like, you're reading? Like, I was not reading. I only started reading books seriously, like non-school syllabus books seriously, because I was like, oh, this will help me be taken seriously by Savarnas, right? So my journey was a hustle, a kind of a attempt from the basement to claw into the Savarna culture. And, like, that perspective I wanted to put out, right? Like, when I critique things like, oh, there'll this Savarna aesthetic, ukulele, and all of that. Like, it hits a lot of people. Like, people laugh about it, but some people also get very uncomfortable because of that. Because I am actually shining the light on the parts of your life which you thought are very natural and organic. But I'm able to do that because I wanted that life. Because you made me feel, and so many people like me feel, that the only way I could, firstly, I needed elevation, and that elevation could become more like you. And I've used the writings of one of my favorite writers, Franz Fanon. Now somebody will correct me my pronunciation. Like, Gayatri Spivak will say, "Oh, this is not the correct pronunciation of Fanon." But I've used Fanon, and Fanon writes about it from the race perspective, and he's talking about how there's an inherent, like, in blackness, it's not just colonial relations and white masters and black populations, but there is this inherent idea embedded within blackness, that that you need to transcend the blackness, and you transcend the blackness by adopting more and more of whiteness. It's stuff like that, uh, that Fanon, even people like Malcolm X critiqued very much. They said that, like, don't give in to this, like, mental slavery of that sort. Celebrate black culture, in that sense. And I think we are just entering that moment within our societies when it comes to caste, because we were not allowed to celebrate our caste legacy and position and culture and icons and looks and desires and aspirations till even like 6 7 years ago. This is a very recent 4 5 year phenomenon, right? So, like, I laid out what is a savarna. The next chapters are about the glass floor, the binary, the top, the bottom, the two branches of the family fighting. And then it's just a series of chapters which just lays out that world. It's about, the corporate Savarna capital complex, like, the Ambanification of the economy. It's a very Banya. It's about Banya ecosystems. Then it is like about, these series of situations, like from like the reconstruction of the education system, because you have to understand one of the core impulses of the Savarna sphere is its constant reproduction. So how do you recreate which already exists? So I talk a little bit about, like, the rise of IB schools and the rise of private universities, and how they create this shift of transferring this generational privilege to the next generation of Gen Z Savarnas. And I talk about marriage, I talk about sex across castes, because let's face it, I wouldn't have this book if I hadn't written Dating Like a Savarna, which kind of blew up. Like I said, I've paid my price. I got let go from my job. I got attacked by Savarna, like, men for abusing them. Savarna women, some Savarna women called me misogynist. It was a whole thing. But I thought I will unpack that a little bit more. So the idea of love, sex, and romance in a caste society. So I've thrown that in the book, in a chapter. That's where I bring Fanon in. There's a whole chapter on, the marriage. In a Savarna system, the marriage is really at the center of things. Like, I use the Ambani wedding and talk about how it's a change of guard moment. Marriage is literally when all of these, young rebellious savarna cultural, जो college में अपने आप को radical revolutionary Marxist also, all of that, this Jim Morrison loving people, how they become ethno traditionalists. And the machine which makes this transformation is the marriage system. It's like this eternal Game of Thrones between different factions of the family, who gets to organize and, the play what role within the shadi ecosystem. If you and your spouse do well, next shadi that happens within the extended family, you guys get more responsibilities. It's a rise and fall of influence within the family, and that's where all the networks, and that's where all of these ideas kind of, like, reproduce in that sense. So I've tried to do a little bit about the anthropology of the Savarna wedding, and how that actually differs from non-Savarna systems. Because that's the other thing. It's not just the scale and the spectacle. Shadi and the social relationships mean slightly differently. There's a plurality of it, something that Savarnas truly don't understand. So I've unpacked a little bit of that. And then we enter the more current moment and start looking towards the future. ये तो यहाँ तक पहुंचे, अब आगे कहाँ जाएंगे? And the idea of all of these Savarna liberal progressives, people like our Lord Beer Biceps, like, who by 2013, 14, 15 were actually progressive people. His name is Beer Biceps. It's not a Sanskari name. He was like talking, like they were talking about, like, a certain kind of very West facing liberal, consumerist lifestyle, and how all of those people who were in their early 20s talking about things like that have now done a massive gharvapsi to traditional mode. In a sense, it's a generational reproduction of conservatism. Like in the around 2005, 6 to around 2013, 14, it seemed like, okay, the next generation is not going to be so conservative. Oh boy, they have come back, and how. And the last chapter is about the what I call the Great Savarna Exodus. No elite privileged Savarna family is raising their next generation in India. If they can manage it, they're all going abroad. That pipeline which has been set up, which puts students into these Sonipat private liberal universities and things like that, all the elites, the students are going into private liberal universities in this, like, Ashoka, Jindal, Flame, etc. And then they all go abroad, and nobody's coming back, actually, literally speaking. So last year, I think, there were about 3 to 5 lakh, I forget what is the exact number, of every year almost 3 to 5 lakh students are going abroad from India. Now 95 to 99% of them are going to be elite Savarnas, because we don't have the access to it. There is like some few scholarships like NOS or MOS or things like that, just state central government things. They send like 50, 60 students, right? But lakhs are going. So who are these people? They are not coming from, the basement. They are coming from the elites, right? So already they are like only like 4 5% of the population caste wise. So if lakhs are going abroad every year, it's an exodus. They're not coming back. So that's where literally India is heading. Like where the elites who were given the mandate to transform India into a developed country by 2020 failed utterly, and now they're all running away from this country as the problems become too big, our cities become unlivable, job crisis hits the ceiling, there is social unrest, the fabric of society is falling apart, the social contract is ruining, and once again it's back to the poor, marginalized, below the floor, into the basement, the people. Once again, it's come to us to rescue the failing story of the Indian nation. That's my book. I'm very surprised that it got published. I'm very surprised it will actually be selling. For some bizarre reason, like uh, they agreed to publish me as a writer, um, but now it's out there, right? So this is where I have come from. In the coming weeks and months, I will, like, usually these, like, publishing houses, they'll do these book tours. Like I said, na, that gross performance of seriousness that they do. So you go to a bookstore and you talk eloquently. No, this is my podcast. I've talked enough eloquently about this book. I'll do another episode on it if at some point if I have to. What I want to do, instead of sitting in these echo chambers of like 20 people in the room, everybody going like, oh, you're an inspiration, you're an inspiration. Instead of that, I want to go out into the real world. I'm going to do a bunch of live shows. I want to go to so many colleges in this country, universities in this country now have Ambedkarite student organizations. I never say no to Ambedkarite student organizations. I want to go there. I want to meet the students. I want to talk about it. The book has been priced very expensively. The hardbound cover, I just realized today, is about 700 bucks. I had no say in what the pricing of the book is. Authors don't get to decide the price of it. I think it's a very high price, but there'll be many students who, especially from the community, who would want to read the book and may not be able to afford it. Or, like, I would rather go and speak to them, and I would rather kind of go and talk to them about the book a little bit, and so those are my ideas. Those are the things that I want to kind of do. Those are things I kind of want to take charge of. And that's what I'll be doing in the coming weeks and months. I'll be announcing my tour dates. I'll be announcing my tour dates on Book My Show listings on my Instagram handle. I'll be hitting all the main cities, basically Hyderabad, Delhi, Bombay, Pune, Gurgaon, maybe Navi Mumbai, Bangalore, definitely. I want to do shows in Calcutta. I want to do shows in Madras, Chennai. I want to go to Kerala. Like I like the idea of. I've always loved Kozhikode. I might want to go there. Um, I'll try to hit Goa. I want to go to Gujarat. I want to go to kind of like Ahmedabad if I can. Um, Definitely, I will at some point go to Nagpur and Varda because my heart lies there. My original plan was to kind of launch the book from there, but the way this is played out is it's not been in my control because the publishing timelines are something very different, and it's my first book. I'm also learning these things, and the podcast will continue as usual. I just want to kind of thank you. It's the 50th episode of the podcast. I never thought I'd like reach 50 episodes. I don't promote the show. I don't make reels out of it. I want to try. I just don't have the time, and I don't want to hire people and like not pay them enough or whatever. Every time I say this, people will be like, "Hey, I'll do it voluntarily," and that makes me feel more guilty. I don't want to take that kind of volunteer energy. You realize, because because I can't, like, this podcast will continue. So I can't, like, have you beholden to that. And you shouldn't, you were listening to my show, you're supporting it, that's enough. You don't really need to give your volunteer energy to it. But my point is, like, I don't promote the show, I don't make reels out of it, I don't have a content schedule. Like, the serious podcasters, they'll be like, every 10 days we will do one episode, between two episodes we will do seven reels, and it's an algorithm farms it out like that. But I'm very happy with the kind of support, the listenership and the audience that this show and my basically my social media presence has got. Thank you all. Believe it or not, I'm very much an introvert. I don't actually have a lot of friends, and I don't have a very active social life. I just, like, stay to myself, stay in my house, do my own shit. I'm very happy spending time to myself. Um, Maybe that's why I'm good at podcasting like this, because it's just me in a room speaking out. But having all of you guys out there feels a little bit nicer, that there are people who listen to this, and I'm not just speaking into the void, and words have a meaning. And I always tell my students this, like, choose your words carefully, because words mean things, and I'm glad that, like, these things that the words mean things to people. On that note, thank you everybody for listening. I'm gonna wrap up. Uh, I'm gonna put there's a pre-order link on Amazon. You can pre-order it. It boosts the algorithm. It signals to Amazon and the publisher that this book is of high interest, so they promote it more or some shit like that. So pre-order it if you want to read it. Come to my shows. If you buy the book and if you come to the show, I'll be very happy to kind of, like, autograph it for you or whatever. Like, if you're at all interested in that kind of shit, like, it baffles me when people do that. I definitely want to go to a lot of college campuses. I'm always interested in talking to young people, young scholars, professionals, teachers, academics. I want that real interaction to kind of play out. Um, Usually books are promoted through, like, these book reviews and newspapers. I doubt I'll get a favorable review. I doubt, like, the Hindu book or the Indian Express book section is first of all going to cover my book. I doubt it very much, and if they do, they'll probably get somebody who will do a hit piece on it. Because podcast institutions, हम जितना भी बोल रहे हैं, like this podcast listenership, you know, you might think, oh, there is a space, people listen and all that. They don't. These institutions have so much power. You have no idea. So I really doubt that they'll even cover a book like this. Um, and if they do, it'll most likely be a hit piece. They'll say one or two nice things, but they will basically undermine and kill the book. Uh, which is why I don't want to go down that route. I have no interest in pandering to Savarna elites. I never have had. Uh, so I'm just, like, doing it the way I would do it. And even if the book doesn't sell, is a failure, I don't care. I wrote it out, and it's there. And see if you like it. See if you order it. Uh, that's all I have to say. Anyways, thank you all for listening. Jai Bhim. Have a good night. Bye bye. Hey, you finished the whole episode. Well done. I can't believe you can tolerate my voice for so long. But in case you liked what you heard, you might consider also joining for the exclusive episode that I do for my paying subscribers, because that show gets into slightly edgier topics and I don't really want to put it out in the public domain. It's available on the Patreon as well as on YouTube through the join option. And in case you don't want to drop extra money, I completely understand. Please keep listening to my regular show. I'm grateful as ever. There's a buy me a coffee link in case you want to drop some love. Otherwise, just have a nice day. Stay being awesome. Bye bye.